Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. As I'm sure most of you guys know by now, Warzone is based a lot around your loadouts. You know, you've got plenty of opportunities to gear up with your own custom classes instead of just using the random ground loot. And late game, 99.9% of the time, you are going to be fighting against people using maxed out weapons that they set up to their liking. So for a game that is based so much around your custom classes, using the best ones possible is obviously going to be key. So today we're breaking down the top 5 best pro loadouts to use, meaning these are the classes that the leaderboard kings use, the top streamers who win tournament after tournament use, and in general, when it comes to the current meta, these are the loadouts that dominate it. So if you enjoy the video at any point, or if you just find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new to the channel, I am always covering the latest Call of Duty news, intel, tips, tricks, basically anything you could think of. So feel free to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all of that stuff. Also, quick reminder, the semi-finals of G Fuel Code Madness are now underway. We are only one round away from guaranteeing ourselves a custom G Fuel Shaker Cup. So if you do want to help me move on to the finals, be sure to use code IMMORTAL to get 30% off your entire order. Anyways, getting right into loadout number 1 for today. Obviously, we've got a lot of components to get into. We've got a primary, a secondary, perks, equipment, the whole 9, right? And honestly, the majority of my classes consist of these same perks and equipment. So we'll just go over those once, whereas the primary and the secondary are the big changes in the other class setups. So we'll be looking at those in more detail as we get to them later on into the video. So on my first loadout, here we're looking at the MP7 as the primary and the RPG as the secondary. And yes, you heard that right, the RPG is actually a part of most setups when you are playing for a high kill game or, you know, a spicy victory. I definitely did not expect a launcher to be one of the best meta weapons when Warzone initially dropped, but lo and behold, here we are. Now on the MP7, what we're focused on here is range. It's already going to be great up close since it is an SMG, obviously, so just extending that range is going to make it even better. So I'm rocking the monolithic suppressor. It keeps me off the radar, it increases the range. That is exactly what we want to have. Then I've got the recon barrel. This will also increase the range and it helps the control as well, so that's a win-win. I'm also using the commando foregrip, which you don't typically see on SMGs, but when you do try to use the MP7 at a range, this grip will provide a noticeable change in recoil, making it a whole lot easier to control. We've also got these 60 round mags on there too. This is going to make cleaning up downed enemies and just wiping squads a bit easier. And finally, I've got the Stippy Grippy on there too for better mobility. Now, this entire setup is going to make the MP7 extremely versatile. It will become one of the most dangerous SMGs in close and medium range fights, and it can honestly hold its own at some longer distances too, which I would say is surprising to say the least. Then, as I mentioned, I am using the RPG as a secondary here because this is going to counter vehicle spam. It's going to be great as a sort of a fear factor weapon, and by that I mean it'll stop enemies from pushing you if you fire one and you break their armor. Obviously, they're not going to just go in guns a-blazing. They're going to sit back and say, okay, that guy's got an RPG, let's find a new way to go about this. And all around, the RPG can actually be a phenom in the right situation. Now, as far as my perks go, like I said, things for the most part stay the same on every setup, with one exception, and I'll go into detail on that. Now, on any class like this, I'm using Cold-Blooded, Ghost, and also Tracker. However, as you'll see, a few of the loadouts today do feature 2 primaries, and for that, I am obviously using Overkill. So something I like to do, and something you'll see a lot of the top players do, is they'll grab a loadout with Overkill first, and then they get a second loadout, either for free or through the buy station. Then they'll choose the same exact class, but with Ghost instead of Overkill. That way you can have 2 fully customized weapons, and Ghost as well. Then for my equipment, C4 is 100% the way to go. It'll take out vehicles extremely easily. Then I do also use the heartbeat sensor because it can provide some pretty vital information too. Now, moving on, getting into the second class for today. This time we're looking at the combination of the AUG SMG and also the Ram 7. However, I will say throughout all the loadouts we're breaking down today, pretty much all the secondaries can be swapped out and I guess interchanged. So for instance, you could use the Ram 7 and the MP7 via overkill, or you can mix and match any of the other setups we break down too. So you could go Ram 7 and RPG as well, so on and so forth, and these will all work pretty well together. But the Ram 7 and the AUG are both really consistent weapons that are going to be great for close, medium, and even some long-range fights too. Now, the Ram 7 does have that faster fire rate, which means it's going to take out armor and health pretty fast. Not necessarily because it's going to be super powerful, but because you can land a lot of shots in a very short amount of time. So you can play relatively aggressive with it, and honestly, it'll work great. So here I am using the Ranger barrel for better control and range, the GI mini reflex to help in those longer fights, the Commando foregrip again, the 50 round mags, and also the grip tape that is stippled as well, all of which will make the Ram even more efficient in a larger variety of engagements. However, I do also kind of go back and forth. I really like to use the monolithic suppressor on most of my setups, so in that case, I would probably swap that out for the grip tape or even the GI mini reflex. Then on the AUG, here we're basically just turning this into an assault rifle to make it even better at a range, and we're using the monolithic suppressor for all the same reasons as before, the extended barrel to increase the range and control, the Merc foregrip for some better hipfire accuracy and control as well, in case you do get into some close range fights where you don't have a ton of time to ADS quickly. We've also got the 5.56 NATO 60 round drums to increase the damage and also to allow for a spray and pray kind of scenario. And finally, we've got the stippled grip tape because honestly, the mobility is not super great, especially because of those drum mags, so that speed boost does actually help out a lot. Now, this setup for the AUG is going to absolutely shred in medium range fights, but close range it can be a bit tricky because it is slightly slower than the AUG you're probably used to using. So starting to fire before you ADS fully is going to help make CQC engagements a little bit easier to win. And once again, I am using these same perks and equipment as before, but obviously with overkill instead of ghost. Now, the next loadout that we've got is based around the M13 in the RPG, but once again, you can swap out that secondary for any of the other weapons that we're covering today, and it will still be a really effective setup. Anyways, the M13 specifically is kind of like the hidden gem of Warzone right now, because most people I think will flock towards some of the other rifles, and the M13 is not necessarily that number one choice, but it is very consistent, especially in medium and long range fights. Close range, it's going to do just fine, don't get me wrong. However, the beauty of the M13 is that the damage drop-off doesn't seem nearly as harsh, and thus you are going to continue to rip through armor and health alike, even in some long range fights. Now, once again, you gotta be using the monolithic suppressor. I also use the Tempest Marksman barrel to increase the range and control, the GI mini reflex, the skeleton stock to add some better mobility to the setup, and also the 50 round mags for the same reasons as before. Honestly, the M13 doesn't really have a ton of recoil, so it is relatively easy to use at all ranges, and it's a very low risk, high reward type of weapon. Then we do also have a few standard meta setups to dive into, and in the spirit of breaking down the best pro themed loadouts, these ones basically have to have a spot in the video. So loadout number 4 today is all about the M4A1 and the R90 shotgun, both of which are going to be the powerhouses in their respective categories. The M4A1 is obviously the most popular assault rifle that we've got in the game at the current moment. It's great in both multiplayer and Warzone. Then the R90 is going to be a super consistent weapon to use in very close range fights. And you know, in situations where you have a final circle inside of a building, let's say, it can absolutely dominate. So on the M4, I like to use the monolithic suppressor, no surprise there, the M16 barrel as it offers the best range and control increases, the GI mini reflex, the Commando foregrip, and the 50 round mags too, most of which of course we have already seen. Then on the R90, I like to use the muzzle choke and the sentry barrel, both of which offer a better range and a tighter spread, the 5mm laser for better accuracy, the Stippy Grippy again for a better sprint to fire speed, and also sleight of hand for faster reloading. So this class kind of gives you the best of both worlds, right? As obviously, the M4 is great for medium and long range fights, whereas the R90 is perfect for close range combat. Now for the final loadout today, we're looking at the duo of the GRA or the GRAU 556 and also the HDR Sniper. This is honestly my #1 go-to loadout for Warzone, and if you watch the videos consistently, you probably already know that going off my abundance of gameplay with these two weapons. But they are going to offer a really diverse range of efficiency when it comes to gunfights. So on the GRAU, or GRA, I honestly still have no idea how to pronounce it, I am using my typical setup of the monolithic suppressor, the Nexus barrel, which does also change the iron sights for anyone wondering, the no stock option, the commando foregrip, and finally the 50-round mags. Then on the HDR, I am using the monolithic suppressor, the pro barrel, the tac laser, the thermal sniper scope, and also the stalker scout stock to close things out. So with all of that being said, those are the best and also the most consistent loadouts to use in the current Warzone meta, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, or if you just found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here and you want to stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news, intel, updates, leaks, and pretty much everything in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I upload a new video. As I said earlier, right now the semi-finals of G Fuel Code Madness are underway, so we are literally one round away from getting our own custom Shaker Cup. That said, if you use code IMMORTAL on anything on the site, it can be a tub or even just a starter pack, every code use helps increase the chances of me moving on. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.